So previously on my channel, I have reviewed the Fujifilm GFX100 Mark II, which is Fujifilm's highest end medium format or large format camera, and it is their best GFX camera that they have ever made. But recently I went on a trip and I got my hands on the GFX100S Mark II. Now, is there a lot of differences between the GFX100 Mark II and the GFX100S Mark II? In this video, I will be talking about the main differences between the two, and I will let you know my thoughts on which one you should personally get. Now, the GFX100S Mark II is basically Fujifilm's cheapest medium format camera, and I know that sounds crazy when this camera starts at $5,000 US, but believe me, when it comes to medium format, $5,000 is basically a steal. Compared to its older brother, the GFX100 Mark II, which basically costs $7,500 US. Now, for a difference of $2,500 US, is it really worth it to get the GFX100 Mark II instead of the GFX100S Mark II? Now, first things first, when it comes to the sensor, they both have a 102 megapixel sensor. And when you think about it, you would say, well, there is no difference between the two, but there is a small, tiny difference. In the GFX100 Mark II, the CMOS sensor is an UHS sensor, which stands for high speed, which will make a difference when it comes to video and rolling shutter, so keep that in mind. But other than that, they do still both have a 102 megapixel sensor and both use the new X Processor 5, which has all the latest in AI features. And when it comes to autofocus, I personally did not see any differences as they both use the new processor. The autofocus was on point and very similar to any Fujifilm camera experience when it comes to the latest and best in autofocus. Now, if weight and size is something that you are concerned about, to be fair, there's not much difference, but the GFX100S Mark II is a tiny bit smaller and lighter than the GFX100 Mark II. Now, both of these cameras use the new NP batteries that Fujifilm uses, and there was no issues with these batteries. To me, I think these are the best batteries that Fujifilm has made so far. I only wish they did use a slightly bigger battery since the size is so big, but there's not much to complain about here. Now, the LCD screens on the back are also pretty much the exact same ones, and the body has a different finish than the GFX100 Mark II. And also, both cameras have 8 stops of stabilization, which is the same on both camera bodies. But now that is pretty much where most of the similarities end between these two cameras. The differences actually start to kick in when we move into video, and the GFX100 Mark II is a way better video camera than the GFX100S Mark II. Now, the price difference comes when you start to look at the video features between the GFX100 Mark II and the S Mark II. Now, the GFX100 Mark II, if you've watched my video, you can see that it can do 4K 30, 4K 60, and even 8K 30 video in 4:2 10-bit and can shoot ProRes internal. However, the GFX100S Mark II is not as good at all. It can only do up to 4K 30 when it comes to video. Yes, it can do 4:2 10-bit and ProRes internal, and both have the new F-Log 2C, which basically gives you 14 stops of dynamic range. But when it comes to video features, the GFX100 Mark II is just way superior than the GFX100S Mark II. So the way I think about it is the GFX100 Mark II is both a photo and video camera, while the GFX100S Mark II is more of a photo-centric camera. Now, if you're a person who does shoot in continuous burst and high burst shooting, the GFX100 Mark II shoots in 8 frames per second, while the GFX100S Mark II can only do up to 7 frames per second. And this is due to the fact that the GFX100 Mark II has the advantage of a larger buffer. Not to mention that the GFX100 Mark II can write to CFexpress storage, which the GFX100S Mark II does not have. So if you are a person who does shoot a lot of burst, keep in mind that the GFX100 Mark II would be better suited as it does 8 frames per second instead of 7. And speaking of storage and a larger buffer, the GFX100S Mark II only has 2 SD card slots, while the GFX100 Mark II has 1 SD card slot and 1 CFexpress Type B slot, which makes reading and writing towards that card way faster on the more expensive model, but you are not going to be missing out on much. If you do have fast, high-speed cards, you will not be having much issues with the GFX100S Mark II. Obviously, the CFexpress card slot makes it more sensible to shoot video on the more expensive model, which is the GFX100 Mark II. And finally, the big difference is, as you can see, the GFX100 Mark II does not have a removable viewfinder, which the GFX100 Mark II has. Not to mention the fact that this viewfinder is not bad, it's just the one on the GFX100 Mark II is just significantly way better. It is larger, it has twice the resolution, everything looks absolutely beautiful looking through the EVF. Not to mention the fact that you can add the EVF tilt adapter, which lets you basically shoot downwards looking through the EVF, which this obviously does not have. Okay, so now that we have talking about most specs and the differences between the two, how was my experience shooting with the GFX100 Mark II? So I took this with me to Qatar, to Doha, and I spent most of my days shooting beautiful, beautiful landscapes with the GFX100S Mark II. I have no complaints, as this is a beautiful photo camera. Similar to any GFX experience, the whole point of a GFX is to slow down, pace yourself, compose your shot, and take that perfect photo at the right time. I found myself having way too much fun with the GFX camera. I found myself having way too much fun with the GFX100S Mark II. The only annoying thing I would say was carrying around 2 GF lenses, which was pretty heavy, and the body itself. The 2 main lenses that I used were the 80mm f1.7 and the 32-64 f4. For me, those 2 were more than enough to take photos of beautiful landscapes, take beautiful portraits, but it really gives you satisfaction when you spend a lot of time planning a specific shoot and then you're just taking absolutely beautiful photos, 100 megapixel photos with a GFX camera. It's just, I don't know what it is. There's something so satisfying about taking photos with the GFX. I just cannot explain it. Now let's go to the conclusion of this video. Which one of the 2 cameras should you get? If you're a person who does both photo and video, and the type of video that you do shoot is pretty much high level filmmaking, cinematography, basically the best in the industry style video, then I highly recommend you get the GFX100 Mark II, as that is more suited for you. You'll be able to shoot more burst as well. You will be able to shoot better quality video. You're gonna get a better EVF, and you will basically be paying $2,500 more. But if you are a person who is already looking at medium format cameras, then you're a person who has that money to spend. It's a camera that I would not personally buy ever, but if I did have the money for one day, if I had the money to buy a GFX camera, I would basically buy it. But if you're a person who wants to focus more on photography rather than video, and you want the best of the best, exact same quality as the highest end GFX100 Mark II, then going for the next best thing and the cheapest best thing for $5,000, which is the GFX100S Mark II, is not a bad move at all. You will save up $2,500, which you can then use to buy a GF lens, and maybe in the future, if you're a person who's making that much money, you can probably just upgrade to a GFX100 Mark II. But that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this comparison between both the GFX100 Mark II and the 100S Mark II. I hope I helped you make a decision if you're a person who has that kind of money. If not, then I hope you enjoyed the photos in this video. They're all absolutely beautiful photos, and it was absolutely so much fun to use that camera. See you guys in the next video. Have a good one.